Thanks for staying with us here on The Real Story. A new commission launched to inform policy, hoping to make an impact in kids' lives struggling across the state. Here to tell us more about it, we have Joe Delong, Executive Director and CEO of the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, and Josh Brown, Chair of the 119K Commission and Outreach Coordinator at Domas. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
So, Josh, we're going to start with you. You know, this whole conversation is about at-risk young people, youth who feel disconnected from school, work, community, all across the state. You know that struggle personally, so tell me a little bit about your story and how you got involved in this effort.
Well, to start it off, I hit about 6 of those. I used to hit about 6 of those categories that you just named. Disadvantaged one, and I can tell you personal experience. 14 years of my life homeless on and off. So that's living in shelters, and that's living in cars, that's living in emergency hotels, that's living in what you call modern day trap houses, which we call them crack houses. You know, railroad apartments where you're just renting a room. Me, 2 other my siblings and my mother, that was our life for about 14 years. So you can only imagine how many times we missed school. You know, you might fall through the cracks, and you know, we also was subject to going to juvenile detention. My brother was going to juvenile detention very young. I did too as a teenager. You know, I had to get my diploma from an alternative school. What happened? I got kicked out of all the public schools in Stanford, the high schools. So. You know, I went to an alternative school when I got out of Bridgeport detention, got reconnected with Domas again because they had a family advocacy program in the arts program at the time. And this is why I even got my driver's license today. My current supervisor was my family advocate. His name is Tom, and I like to shout Tom out because Tom has been very, very instrumental in my life. Him, along with the executive director of Domas, Michael Duggan. Now, I've known him 25 years, and I've known Tom 18.
Wow.
So that goes to show you something about the work that we do over at Domas, and how you can overcome obstacles, you know. And I don't want to take too much time. I don't want to take no time away from Joe or anybody, but, you know, when we're talking about disconnecting and disengage, you know, again, that was my life. But with the right resources, ambition, connecting yourself and getting connected, you know, I was able to get a job in retail banking. I worked in retail banking 10 years. I ultimately became a vice president in retail banking. You know, I was able to work now in nonprofit for the last 10 years as well, because I started my stint while I was still working in retail banking. And the reason why I got involved, because I was trying to put young people in the bank, because I wanted them to learn about money like I did. Instead of going to get it the wrong way. So, you know.
That's what this commission is trying to accomplish,
and that's
right?
what it's going to accomplish.
That's what it's trying to do. So this 119,000 commission, this just launched this past week. So tell me about what this specifically is, Joe. What's the goal here?
It's Josh Brown. It's 119,000 young people whose lives are going in an unproductive direction. And we hear Josh's story and know that it doesn't have to be that way, that there's hope, that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I think what these municipal leaders who are taking this on are trying to do is to find the quickest way to that light and to show this population that light. In order to do that, we need somebody like Josh who can take us to this population and hear from them directly and hear their personal struggles. We need outside experts, which is important, and we have those outside experts. But perhaps as importantly or most importantly, we need community engagement. And that's how this commission is really set up. It's set up to have experts. It's set up to go to the population. But it's also set up in a way to engage the community for our communities all across the state to better understand what they can do to help and to share their ideas back with the commission so our municipal officials can learn from them as we develop these strategies to tackle these challenges.
And there's already a timeline here with meetings scheduled with lots of different community leaders from all different towns and cities across Connecticut. And, you know, we see so many of them involved in this process because they're all seeing the, you know, outcomes of disconnected youth in lots of different ways, from chronic absenteeism to homelessness to gun violence. So Josh, as you said, you've lived this and you now work with kids who are experiencing this. So what's at risk in our communities when youth stay at risk without any intervention?
You know what? I carry around this little folder on me, and you know, people sometimes I've been called sometimes crazy. I want to show you something. This is my transcript from high school.
Okay.
So when I'm constantly talking to Joe, and this is why you know, shout out to you, Joe. You know, I shout out you and Andrew a lot, because Andrew Ferguson, who's the president of the Dalio Foundation, who's a co-chair with me, they support a bunch of the work that I do, and that's the reason why. Because if you don't get them connected, that shows you on there the first 3 years. That's all Fs.
Yep.
Kicked out of the public schools. It shows you on there I went to juvenile detention, like I explained. But then it also shows you on there when I got connected with a program that got me out of school, that got me the help that I needed, that got me the resources that I needed. I was able to get connected to a job. Now, you know, did I need some help with a resume? I was able to go to somebody and get help with a resume. I had to sit down with somebody and do mock interviewing with too, you know? And I also had to get a job that was gonna keep me sustainable, me and my family, you know what I mean? And that's why I did choose the bank. I don't want to really tell you the story. Oh, I could tell you the story about how I got into the bank. I was literally, me and a friend, God bless his soul, Kirky, he's not here no more, but we sat down to have a conversation when I was 18, and I said, hey, Kirky, you know, where's all the money? He said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, it's in the bank, man. I said, you thinking what I'm thinking? He said, yeah, man. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, we in and out of there. I said, no, man, no. I said, but if I go into the bank and I learn about money, they got to teach me about money. Every time you go to the bank, they ask you, do you have a checking account? You can't sell a checking account if you don't know what it is. You know, at that time, I knew nothing about money. I had to learn. I learned about a checking, savings, mortgages. I learned about investments. I learned in the bank, and I had a job that was going to keep me where I could pay my rent, I can pay my bills, I can pay my car insurance, things like that. These young people are going to have to be connected to those same type of jobs and resources. So, you know, with all that being said, I also own a home now. That I'll tell you, 14 years that I was homeless, 7 years I was able to pay my home off. You know, I also, this is why I carry this paperwork, because I show young people this. You know, I don't. And Joe, again, stop me
the
if I'm
physical
going too
proof
much.
of it,
That's right, you know, because...
And you mentioned funding and money, and Andrew at Dalio, that's who's funding this 119K commission, correct, Joe?
Correct,
And that's also where this number comes from, right? From that Dalio report.
Yeah, that 119K represents the 119,000 kids, young people, that are either at risk or either moderately or severely disconnected. And I think that's one of the things that's important about this commission is we're not intermingling all of those kids. They have different needs, different challenges. They require different resources, different ways to reconnect them to society. But what we also know is if we do nothing, this report shows us that every year there's an additional 10,000. And so imagine if we don't act, if we don't cut that off. So there's the downside to acting, but aside from the moral reasons to act, there's also a tremendous economic reason to act. You take these 119,000 kids and you get them back into society in a positive way and generating positive economic activity. That's good for all of us. So it's not just morally it feels good to help them. Economically, we all have a vested interest in getting these kids back in the right direction.
And Joe, you know, some people might say, well, this is just a series of conversations. What concrete work, you know, is actually happening? Tell me about some of the resources or programs that we might see stemming out of this commission now.
Well, the one thing the commission's going to do that I think is very wise is it is going to have each one of its meetings is going to be focused around a specific driver because there are several different drivers of this population and there are different people working within the space of those drivers. Okay. So Josh talked about the homelessness, which is so very real. You also have these cross-sectional drivers where, you know, perhaps a young person graduates high school and they have, or doesn't graduate, it ages out, they have all these resources and these programs that are working for them, but the moment they age out, nobody's tracking them. Nope. And so the system is not connecting them to the further support that they need. So you have these cross-sectional things that go across each one of the drivers. Yeah. You have things like trauma that can go across each one of these drivers. And then you have the individual drivers themselves, which again could be substance abuse, mental illness, chronic truancy, homelessness, those types of things. So the commission is going to look at each one of those individually, but then also look at the cross-section things that tie them all together and develop a series of strategies, some which will be local, some which may be in the nonprofit industry, and some which may be require legislative action. But those things collectively, we hope, are a formula to turning this around.
And we could keep talking about this because it is so interesting and it is so important. But really quickly, in our last minute here, Joe, Josh, if people want to get involved in these upcoming conversations and contribute to this, what do you want them to know? Where should they go to get more information about this? Why should they get involved?
The first place they need to go is this new website that's been launched to support all this work. It's 119kcommission.org. Okay. And if they go to 119kcommission.org, not only can they see information that's being pushed out, but they also can bring information in and interact directly with the commission. It'll have the schedules of the meetings. It'll have the ability for them to connect with commission members and offer their own testimony and support. It'll tell them where they can come to these local meetings, to get engaged and get involved. So that should be an incredible resource for people all across the state to stay engaged with this work.
Gotcha. Perfect. Yeah. Well, Josh, Joe, thank you so much. I wish I could keep talking with you more, but unfortunately that's all the time we have. But thank you both so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Of course, and that does it for us here. But if you want to watch these segments again, you can head to fox61.com or download the free Fox 61 app and watch The Real Story every Sunday at 10 a.m. on Fox 61 or streaming on Fox 61 Plus. Have a great rest of your morning.